The next step in this project is to plan out and then record a Photoshop action. You want to go back to the 5 photographs that you edited as part of the Feels Like Home photo assignment and think and go ahead and search through those, see if there are any photographic combinations, adjustment layers, curves, levels, gradient maps, FX, etc. that you liked and that you would like to see on more of your photographs. When thinking about creating actions, you want to err on the side of simple, especially when you're just starting this process. You can kind of get more complex as you feel more comfortable, but your assignment will be to create 2 actions and then run all of your photographs through those actions. So for the first one, like I said, err on the side of simplicity. Maybe play with a couple of adjustment layers, adding text, etc. But you kind of need to write out a script and know exactly what you're going to do before you go in and then record it in Photoshop, or else your adjustment, your action will not work properly. So go ahead and write that out like I did over here, indicating which adjustment levels you use and then when and what order, as well as if you do things like levels and curves, indicate the type of the curve, what it looks like. You could even draw a little picture, anything to write yourself a brief script so that it's smooth sailing once you begin to create an action. Go into Photoshop. This version looks a little bit different than the one you were working on because it's a bit older. It doesn't have all of the functions that I want it to, but will make do for this demo. The first thing that I want to do is pull up my Actions panel. So I'll go to Window, Actions, Alt F9 is the shortcut. I have a bunch of default actions here that I can use, but just like a lot of the default settings in Photoshop, it works better if I make my own. I kind of want to be in control of what my photos look like. So I'm first going to make a new folder or a new set of actions, and I'll call it Miss White's Actions. This will be good for saving purposes later. And then I'm going to create a new action. It looks exactly like the Create a New Layers option in the Layers panel. Miss White's Action 1. And you can label these just with your name, or could also label it how it's going to turn out. So modified black and white, so that when I get multiple going on within this folder, I can quickly determine which action does what. You can also set, you can set the function key. So if you want to run this at any given time on one photograph, you can choose any of these function keys, and then when you press the function key, your action will start. So I'll say F2. If you have a lot of actions, you can choose Shift or Control to have more options. Now I'm going to begin recording this, so I want to make sure that I'm focused and that I'm going through my script and not readjusting anything, because anything that I do in Photoshop will pick up and then attach to this action or include in the action order. So I'll say record. The first thing I'd like to do is to add a gradient map. I'll click this. If this were a later version of Photoshop, I would click the gear that's up here, not the play button, and I would choose photographic examples or photographic gradients, but that doesn't exist in this one. So I will just go with the traditional black to white. And I'll say OK. In my notes, it says that I want to drop the opacity here. So instead of being on the layer mask, I want to click the actual adjustment layer here, and I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 80%. So I want to be really decisive with this. Sorry. I'm going to add a curves layer, and I'll use my color picker. So I want to make an S curve. So I want to find kind of a low tone there, drag it down, and then find one that's a little bit brighter and drag it up to make a subtle S curve. The last thing that I'll do to complete this action is to add type. So click my type key here, and that should, I'll click where I'd like to add type, and I'll increase the font size, choose a font, and if you have a signature, or if you get into like taking people's senior pictures or running a small photography business, having a watermark is sometimes important for copyright issues, or just to let people know that, you know, to kind of brand yourself, to let people know that you're the one that took the photograph. So I'll just tag if you have any like social media handles, you can also do that as well. So I want it small. I kind of want it down in the lower left hand corner. It's fine where it is right there. And I also want to resize my image. If you think you should do this at the beginning. Oops. I'll click there, image size, and I want to bring this up to about 300 pixels per inch, and then bring the width down to about 12 and the height to 8. So like I said, have this be the first thing that you do in an action, but it will do just fine here as well. So I've resized it. And it depends on how you want to work with actions. You could go through the save commands as well, but since we're going to do batch editing and batch processing, we would override any save commands that we tacked on at the tail end of this action. So for the purposes of what we're doing now, I'm not going to go through File, Save As in a specific folder, but know that depending on what you want to do, you can experiment with that and see what it does. At this point, I'm going to push stop, and it has stopped recording our action.